Solidarity is terrible at Redstone. A couple days ago, I had a video of Solidarity's come across my YouTube recommended feed, and it was him trying to complete 3 Redstone challenges that his friends gave him. The catch was, Solidarity had never really done anything with Redstone before, and to say the least, it was,
So we put a redstone block there and a torch. Still nothing happening. What about a lever?
not very good. So I decided, maybe this guy just needs a little bit of help, right? So that's what I'm here to do today. I'm here to help him out with these redstone challenges and see if I can maybe improve them or make them a little simpler and hopefully teach him a little bit more about redstone. And maybe even teach you something a little bit too. Now, I may not be any mumbo jumbo, but I do like to think that I can hold my own when it comes to redstone. So let's get started, shall we? Alright guys, right behind me are all 3 builds that Solidarity was challenged to build in his video. Now, I'm going to be looking at these a little bit out of order, just in terms of kind of 1, stuff I can explain more simply, and 2, in terms of saving the coolest thing for last. So let's get into it, shall we? Right away, we're going to actually start with the 3rd build, because this is the one that he was able to do the best. The challenge here was simply make a pulse extender, which is just something where we basically have something that turns on, and then the pulse stays on for longer than this stays on, right? Basically, the pulse is just extra long. Now, he did build this, which is very cool and very impressive. Except he had no idea how or why it worked. It was very evident when he built this, which is just something that locks itself. That's no good. So let's go ahead and actually take a look at how in the world this thing even works. In order to do that, we need to understand a little bit of redstone basics. Right now, I've just turned on a texture pack that lets me see the signal strength of redstone dust. But what is signal strength? Great question. So, redstone signal strength has to do with the basically power level of a piece of redstone when it is powered. At the absolute maximum, it can receive a power level of 15, which depletes by 1 every block that the redstone signal travels, going all the way down to 0. The thing about comparators is that whenever a comparator receives a redstone input from the back, it will give out the same exact redstone signal. So in this case, it's receiving a signal strength of 11 in the back, and it's outputting a signal strength of 11. So what does this have to do with this? Well, if we turn this on and then freeze the game, you can actually get a better idea of how this works. We're going to step by 2 ticks at a time. Let's take a look at this. So in this case here, we have this comparator, which is receiving a signal strength of 13 into the back, and it's going to output a signal strength of 13. That then depletes by 1 as it travels a block, and this gives an input of 12 into the back of this comparator, which then makes this comparator output a signal strength of 12, which depletes into 11, which goes into here. This outputs the 11, this turns into a 10, this receives that, and outputs a 10 until this thing turns off. Simple as that. But obviously this is a little bit complicated and it was made by accident. So what are some simpler ways we could have actually achieved the same effect? Well, let's take a look. So in order to understand how to do this, we need to understand how in the world pulse extenders even work. And it's really simple. The main thing is we have one input line like this, and then we have another one that goes to the same output, which in this case is our piston. Then this line simply stays on longer than the original input line does, and that'll keep our output powered on until this turns off. So here's a kind of brief demonstration of that. What we have is 2 redstone repeaters, both powering this piston. This one powers it directly, and this one, which is delayed, powers this block, which also powers the piston. When I turn this on, this lights up first, which keeps the piston powered, and then this one lights up. When I turn this off, this will turn off first, but this one takes a little bit longer, and that keeps the piston extended for just a little bit longer than before. And that's it. That's how pulse extenders work. So for a couple designs here, we have this. This is an old design, but it works like a charm. We have this redstone line here, which powers this piston. And then we have a line of repeaters here that are all powering blocks. These blocks, when they get powered, will also power the redstone line, which means this stays powered until all of these repeaters turn off, which extends our pulse. Moving on, we're going to go ahead and skip over to this here. This, all he had to do was build something where items go into a chest, and then they go into a dropper, and then the dropper dispenses all of the items. All this is asking for, basically, is a redstone clock, which is just something that turns redstone on, and then turns it off, and then on and off, over and over and over again. This is the design he built, but he didn't come up with this himself. He needed a tutorial, so, yeah, not great. And to be fair, this is a very complicated way of doing this. I mean, it's a very good way of doing it, but it's not a way I would expect someone with zero redstone knowledge to ever figure out, because we're using comparator clocks, right? This comparator's in subtract mode. Who even needs to know what that means? Goodness gracious. We're using bud powering to power this dropper, right? What does that mean? That's big fancy wordage. It's all stuff that's way too complicated for what we actually are trying to do, because we don't even need to detect if there's anything in here. We just need this to dispense all of the items. So let's take a look at some options that we have. Now, what I have here, this is probably the simplest way of pulling this off. Basically, we just have a redstone pulse going around in a circle using these redstone repeaters here. And every time this piece of redstone dust gets powered, it's going to power this dropper. So if we turn this off, you can see every time this redstone line turns on, it will make this dropper basically try to force out an item. And if we put items in here, it slowly dispenses them out. Then here's a bit of a simpler clock, or a smaller clock rather. It's just two hoppers facing into each other, with one item going back and forth between them. And then this comparator just gets an input from this hopper here. Basically, anytime a comparator has a container at the back like this, if there's items in there, it will receive that as an input and output something. So every time there's an item in this hopper, this comparator gives an output, and that will power this dropper here. So we can go ahead and throw these in, and they will all dispense out. Now, what if we still want to detect if there's actually items in here at all? Well, that is what these two designs are for. So this one basically just uses this, but we get a little bit tricky with it. So the way this works is we have this hopper here, which is powered. When a hopper is powered, it can't pick up items from the top, and it can't dispense items out. But the moment this thing gets unpowered, the item is free to flow between these two hoppers. And now we just have that same clock as we did over there. So all we do is anytime we detect that there's an item in here, this comparator turns on, which powers this block and turns this torch off. And that's it. This thing works like a charm. But if we want to make things a little bit faster, we can do something like this. And what we do is we put two observers next to each other like this. Observers, if you didn't know, look like this to a degree. And they detect block updates on this face here. So anytime a block gets placed or removed, or if this moves, or if something changes in front of it, it detects that and gives an output. So if we put two of these back to back like this, they constantly update each other, and we get a redstone clock. We can use that to our advantage with something like this. When an item's in this dropper, this comparator detects that and powers this block, which extends this piston and puts these two back to back. Simple as that. And it's much faster than the other options we have here. In fact, it's actually too fast. And if we put items in this chest, they dispense faster than the hopper can move the items from the chest to the dropper. That's enough of this stuff. Let's get to the cool thing, which is this. This is my favorite of the 3 builds by far. Basically, all I had to do was have orange flame, flick a lever, and then there's blue flame. And bonus, if he flicks the lever back or flicks another lever, the orange flame comes back. So what he ended up doing here was, because he didn't know how to actually swap it, we just have 2 campfires. And what we do is we flick this lever, it puts the orange campfire out, and we are left with a blue flame. And then if we want to bring that orange flame back, we just flick this lever, and bam. We've got ourselves our orange flame back. Now, this isn't exactly what we were requesting or what we were looking for. We're looking to literally change the flame. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So, believe it or not, this is all of the redstone that we actually need. And the way this works is we have this lever here, which powers this block and powers this piston. And that's going to make this extend. And it's going to push these 2 blocks over this way. And then if this one extends, it pushes these 2 blocks over this way. And that's just how we swap the blocks back and forth, right? So I can take these out, see, like that. And then the redstone dust here and here just power this dispenser, which has flint and steels in it. And what's nice is anytime a block gets moved, if there's flame on it, the flame gets extinguished. So we don't have to worry about that sticking around. We just flick the lever, and bam. Whoops. The fire gets switched. But what if we wanted to do it with just 1 lever? Well, then we have to get a little more creative. And we do something like this. So this is a piston with a redstone block on it. And we have 2 different redstone lines. One for if the redstone block is here and the piston is retracted. And another for if the redstone block is here from the piston being extended. The actual redstone to do the block swapping and to light the blocks on fire is the exact same as this, but we just have redstone here and here as opposed to having levers there. When we flick this lever, you can see this piston extends, which turns this redstone line off and turns this redstone line on, and it swaps the blocks over like this. And if we flick this back, this retracts, which turns this line off and turns this one on. And now we have the orange flame back, just like that. Very simple, very satisfying. Also, though, it's very big. And I want to do better, because I know a thing or two about redstone. And I also learned a thing or two about redstone by making this. And by this, I'm referring to this machine right here. This is a very compact block swapper that also lights the block on fire. So if we flick the lever, you can see we swap to our soul sand block here, and it lights into blue flame. If we flick it back, it lights into orange flame here. And this thing is dumb. I'm not even going to try to explain how it works, because you'd have to understand why this works. And that's confusing. I'm not going to try to explain this, because I don't even understand how this works. It just does. And if you do redstone for a while, eventually you just learn to just accept that redstone does things that you're never really going to fully understand why they work. But anyways, that is going to do it for these 3 builds. I hope you guys learned a thing or two here. Hopefully I made redstone somewhat less confusing. Just ignore that thing specifically, alright? While I was kind of giving him a hard time, I thought it was really cool to see someone with 0 redstone knowledge actually try to do specific redstone builds. And hopefully, it encourages him to try redstone again in the future. And maybe he can do it a little bit better if he just learns a thing or two about redstone from when he last made that video, which was 10 months ago. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's a little different from what I usually do, but I had a lot of fun with it. And if you guys liked it, feel free to hit that like button and maybe even subscribe to my channel. And until next time, guys, I will see you in the next video. Bye!